So building superior relationships, which is our next session, this has to do with men and women. What we've done is we've studied the interactions and the chemistry between men and women for a long time. And so we have some ideas that you might be able to use. We say there are 6 keys to successful, happy relationships. Now, there may be many more keys, but this is about 98, 99% of it. Number 1 is that similarities attract. And you've heard this before, similarities attract. And what does this mean? It means because of the law of attraction, we're attracted to people who are similar to ourselves in certain specific ways. And the similarities attract in almost all areas, but especially in the area of values. Remember I said that Ayn Rand wrote that all love is a response to values. We love another person because they represent the values that we most treasure, that we consider to be the most important. I shouldn't say this, I say this out of school, but sometimes my children have asked me, why did you marry Barbara? And I always have one answer. And I say, I married her because of her character. Not that she wasn't a beautiful, attractive, intelligent, wonderful woman, but when I married, because those things will go. A lot of things will go or will change, but I married her because of her character. And I still remember the moment I fell in love with her is when I saw that she had such wonderful character. And that was the most important thing of all. So that's what we're attracted to with another person. We're attracted to values that they seem to espouse. The great disappointment is when they seem to espouse a value and we find out later that they don't actually share that value. That's a real relationship killer. So we have similarities, especially in areas of values, children, attitudes toward children, having children, raising children, and so on. Money is important. Most marriages or relationships break down because of arguments over money. It's the #1 killer. Sex, attitudes toward sex. And here's another big discovery, leisure time. Is you'll find that people who are ideally compatible really enjoy doing the same things in their leisure time. I've had friends who've gotten married and she liked to go dancing and he liked to do stamp collecting. And so she'd go out dancing and she'd go out partying and he'd be working at home on his stamp collection. How long do you think the marriage lasted? Not very long. And unfortunately, children come into a marriage and it's even worse. So you'll find that people who get married like to ski together, they like to go out to dinner together. You'll find that couples who are really compatible in 80% of times will order the same dishes. As they'll say times 2, They look at the menu and they look at everything else and they finally order the same dishes. They'll have the same thing. And they like the same wines and they like the same activities and they like the same movies in general. So what I found, and I'll talk about this in just a second, I'll come to it in a second. I get ahead of myself. Damn, it's so exciting. So ask yourself, and you look at this in terms of values. What are your values? That's the core of your personality. How do you feel about children? Many women make the mistake of marrying a man, he says he doesn't want to have any children. Well, most women want to have children. It's a biological drive. And they think, well, he'll change. And they get married and they get stuck into a relationship that lasts for years. And he wasn't kidding. He doesn't want any children. And she does. And sometimes the woman feels that she's wasted her whole reproductive life in a situation where she thought he would change, and she thought he would change a basic value. So one of the first things you do is do an interview. Take them to a zoo, see how they treat the other kids. Anyway, money, sex, leisure time. When you meet the person who is right for you, there will be a chemistry. Khalil Gibran said, there will be a moment of the meeting of the minds, a chemical moment at the first instant of meeting between a man and a woman, or it will never happen. And that's in his book, The Prophet, when they ask him, talk to us of love. And he said, this first answer is, there will be a meeting at the first instant of glance, or it will never happen. And it's quite amazing. People their eyes will meet across a crowded room, and they'll be married for the rest of their lives. They may not get married that evening, but they will start to talk to each other and go out with each other and be together forever. And if it's not there, it very seldom comes later. So there's always almost an instant chemistry, and it's very hard to force. That's one thing that you cannot force, is the chemistry in a relationship. It feels right because you will be in accord on almost all the critical areas of life. And here's an interesting thing that Napoleon Hill said. He said, subconscious minds communicate with other subconscious minds. So you'll meet a person and know nothing about them, but your subconscious minds, your basic values, your core things that you consider important will communicate in that instant. And only later will you find, surprise, surprise, this person likes this, and this person believes in that, and this person has the same background, and so on. You never knew any of that. It was just the eyes meeting. And it was the subconscious connecting at 30,000 times the speed of the conscious mind. So this often happens. Sometimes you meet a person, you had an experience, you meet a person, and you even see them, and you just like them. Male or female, you just like them immediately. You have an immediate rapport with that person. And sometimes you meet a person or you see a person, and you immediately dislike them. And later on, you'll find out that that instant feeling was well justified. The person that you instantly liked is a really likable person. The person that you instantly had an aversion to is not a good person. You'll have it instantly, almost so fast that you cannot even process it with the conscious mind. Rule is always listen to that gut feeling. Always listen to that intuitive feel that you have for other people. If you ever go against that intuitive feel, then it can be very, very painful and costly, as everybody who's been in business knows. Okay, opposites attract. This is the second principle of relationships, but only in one area, temperament. Nature demands balance. So if there's an outgoing person, they are balanced with an ingoing person. And the way that you can determine this is what is called the talk test. The talk test is everybody likes to talk and everybody likes to listen. So each person has a certain need to talk. This is person one, and this is person two. And so they have a certain need to talk and a certain need to listen. And there's about 10 to 15% of comfortable silences when you're together. Now, an incompatibility occurs when somebody only likes to talk 15% and the other person only likes to talk 15%. So there's huge periods of what are called uncomfortable silences. And this can occur later in a relationship. Have you ever been in a restaurant and seen two people eating and they don't talk? Or you've been driving and there's two people sitting in a car looking straight ahead and they don't talk? This is a sign of incompatibility. Or the worst is when they fight for airtime. Is both people like to talk 80% of the time. If two professional speakers get together and you just can't shut them up. So they're always kind of finishing each other's sentence and tripping each other's words. They don't listen, they cannot talk. So a good relationship is the talk test. Is an easy ebb and flow. It goes back and forth, and you can spend hours in an easy ebb and flow of conversation, subject after subject, with about 10 to 15% of comfortable silences. You're just comfortable. Number three is commitment. In a good relationship, there's a total commitment. There's a thing in relationships called a trading relationship, where people only commit part way. I'll go 50% of the way, you go 50% of the way. The key to a successful relationship is that you go 100%, and both of you go 100%. The overlap is 100%. Because if both of you go 50%, then all that has to happen is a disagreement, and it opens up. It's like a bridge that opens up in the middle, and the relationship can start to collapse. But if you both go 100%, then you can have all kinds of flexibility in the span, if you like, and the relationship is still solid. So total commitment is absolutely important. And that's why if you're not 100% committed to a relationship, then it's not the right thing for you. Fourth, the similar self-concepts attract and are most compatible. What does that mean? It means that people will generally be compatible with people who are about as happy as they are. Now it's interesting because you sometimes find miserable couples. Neither one, they're both negative. They both complain all the time, but they're quite compatible because they sit there and they complain and grouse and whine and moan and bitch, and that's just their lifestyle. And they watch television, they complain about who's on television and complain about the neighbors. So some people can be happy together even though they're mutually negative. But you will always be most compatible with a person who's about as happy as you are. If you ever try to get involved with a person who's not as happy as you, you're in for a lot of conflict and a lot of problems. Now here's a basic rule, and I've said this before, and the basic rule is people don't change. People don't change their basic self-concepts after they become adults. Now, they may change if there is a significant emotional event. In other words, a miraculous event. Moses does come down from Mount Sinai, and lightning strikes and the clouds part and the human being changes, but not bloody likely. So therefore, just accept that if a person is not happy, you're not going to make them happy. The rule is that if a happy person marries an unhappy person, the unhappy person will drag the happy person down. The happy person will not bring the unhappy person up. It just ain't going to happen. And many people think, well, I'm happy, so I'll take this person who's attractive and has a lot of good qualities, and I'll make them happy like me. It just doesn't happen. That person is miserable. It's almost like they're a sea anchor. They will drown the swimmer. No matter how strong the swimmer is, that anchor will eventually pull them under. And eventually they'll have to walk away. Do you remember that line from the movie Network, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore? About 60–70% of divorces in America are initiated by women because they're mad as hell and they're not going to take it anymore. They're just not going to spend the rest of their life in an unhappy relationship, and they just walk. And he's sitting there watching television. He has no idea what's going on. But they make a decision. He is not going to change. He's quite content being the person that he is, and I'm out of here. And they, in retrospect, they turn back and say it was the best decision they ever made. It takes a lot of courage to do it. The happiness scale, how happy are you on a scale of 1 to 10? How happy are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And then how happy is the other person? And just make sure that if you're an 8 in terms of general happiness, make sure that that person's a happy person too. And make sure they're an 8 as well. If you're a 5 or a 10, make sure that they're the same level, because if they're not, you'll have continuous conflict. Number 5 is the 5th characteristic is liking. And liking is actually more important than being in love, liking and respect, because being in love can come and go. You can have arguments, you can have fights, you can be really furiously angry and so on. So love can come and go, but as long as the liking and respect is there, the love will come back. What is the opposite of love? What is the opposite of love? Yes, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. It's just not caring. This is when it's over. I mean, you can hate a person temporarily, because the very fact that you can hate a person means that you feel very strong emotions toward that person. But indifference is where the flame has gone out. The fire is cold, it's gone, you just don't care. And when you reach indifference, it's virtually impossible to save a relationship. When you reach indifference, basically you're just sharing the same roof, sharing the same living quarters. And it's very hard to get to get the fire going again. It's almost impossible. So liking and respect, these two feelings are more important than being in love, because as long as you like and respect the other person, then you can patch it up. Now we have a little problem with Maria and Arnold in California this week. And when Maria found out what Maria found out, this liking and respect went completely. It's gone. You could see it's absolutely crystal clear. I mean, it's over, baby. There's no way that we can repair this. Apparently, did you read the latest news? The children were born within a very few days of each other, and the person working for them was pregnant at the same time, and working in the house at the same time Maria was pregnant. And here's Arnold. We're back and forth. I wonder what's going through Arnold's mind. Well, I'll tell you, he's got a lot to answer for. But apparently he's worth a lot of money, so Maria's going to be set up quite nicely. In California, you know, we have community property law. That means that everything is divided 50-50 upon divorce. So you say, well, why is it that people go to court and have these fights in court? Well, you go to court to fight over his 50%, see how much the woman can get of that. Because her 50% is locked in. Now, how much of his can we get? And that's what virtually all the all the divorce fights are over, is how much of his you can get. Not only his now, but his in the future. So anyway, Arnold's going to end up paying big time for his indiscretion. Isn't that a good word? His indiscretion. The best friend test is that you're ideally suited to your mate when your mate will be your best friend. They'll be your best friend in the world. There's no person that you would rather spend time with. There's no person that you'd rather go on vacations with, go out for dinner with. Is that everybody else in your life is really peripheral. Your mate is your best friend. And so you always ask, who's your best friend in the world? Your mate is your best friend. If you have other best friends, I got best buddies and best girlfriends, and we go on vacations. I know people who go on vacations with their girlfriends, women who go on vacations with their girlfriend, men who go on vacations with their men friends. They don't want to go on vacations with their wife. They just don't like them that much. They love them, you know, but they don't like them that much. So best friend is a really, really important thing. What we find is when you meet the right person for you, you know what, you turn around and say, I just met my best friend. I just met my best friend. That's the person for me. And that person is there, by the way. That person is out there. Now, communications is another critical factor in relationships. Good communications require time, which I keep talking about. They require a high quality and quantity of time. So a car trip I've mentioned, is an opportunity for uninterrupted conversation with your spouse over an extended period of time. A car trip, Barbara and I will sometimes drive to Palm Springs to take a 2 or 3 day weekend. And what we'll do is we'll drive all the way there, 2.5 to 3 hours, and all the way back, and we will never play anything on the radio, never play a CD. We'll just use that time because, as I mentioned before, the car becomes a cocoon and it fills with conversation. And amazing things come out, and you get to talk about all kinds of things. And the longer you're in that car, the more things come out. I've known cases where people are on the verge of getting married and they took a car trip to visit relatives, 3 or 4 hours. By the time they got out of that car, they hated each other's guts. They never got married. I've had friends who are couples, 2 husband and wife, and they took a car trip on vacation. By the time they got there, they never wanted to see each other again because the car brings out. And it's quite amazing. It's almost like a drug. It's like a truth serum. It brings out what is really in the other person when you drive in a car for a long time. With my kids, and they know this, with my kids, whenever I would drive them anywhere, I would never have anything on. I would just listen to them and ask them questions. Never, or they would listen to me. I remember I was driving with David and some of his friends, and I was talking to them about when you grow up, you've got to have goals, and it's really important that you become men of character and everything else. And there's 3 of his friends, and they're all sitting there quietly, and at the end of it, they all went like this. Thank you for the seminar, Mr. Tracy. You remember that, Dave? That was really funny. From then on, I stopped talking when I was driving with my kids and asked them questions. So number 1, men are direct. Number 2 is women are indirect. And this is very important to understand. Men and women are very, very different in their personalities and temperaments. One of the problems that women have is women can sense things and communicate with women and know what's going on with women without even really asking them. And they assume that men have the same ability and they're just not trying. And the fact is that men are not. If you take a woman's head and you take the screw off the top of the woman's head, you'll find a computer with lights and diodes and going all over the place. If you take the top off a man's head, you'll see one big block. Nothing's happening. There's no lights. There's no going. When a man and woman are sitting in front of a television, 80% of a woman's brain is fully functioning. She's thinking about the television. She's thinking about him. She's thinking about life. She's thinking about relationship. She's thinking about her, how big her stomach is, and she's thinking about whether she picked up the groceries. And she's thinking about the friend she spoke to and the phone call she got and the work she has to do. He's just sitting and watching TV. Dumbest. Here's the dumbest question. Actually, it's the second dumbest question a woman can ask a man. Jerry Seinfeld said this is when women say, what do men think about? And his answer was, not much. Dumbest thing you can say to a man, what are you thinking about? He goes, huh? Oh, I was just thinking how beautiful you are. He's scrambling. He's like a fish on the dock. I mean, thinking of something to say because he's not thinking about anything. He's just sitting there. He's got nothing going. He's shut down. You know? And here's the worst question. That's the second worst. Tell me what you're really feeling. Men are like fence posts. They don't feel anything. They're just sitting there. But they want to give you an answer, so they scramble around in their mind like a person running around opening drawers, looking for something, trying to give you an answer that will make you happy. Well, I was just feeling about how much I love you. Oh, that's good. I mean, that's what she wanted. Now can I go back to the television, please? So you have to understand, men and women are different. Men are direct, they say things directly, and women are indirect. Men are not mind readers, and many women are. Women are often mind readers. Women can pick things up. You know, a man can call home, and he can say, and she'll answer the phone, and he'll say, hi, and she'll say, what's wrong? She could pick up what's wrong. It's your boss. What did he say? And she can pick up that there's a problem in his life from a hi or a hello, from a single word. He can walk in looking cheerful as everything else. She'll say, what's the matter? What's wrong? What happened? Well, what do you mean what happened? Come on, tell me. How do you know this stuff? Women are human lie detectors. You can't lie to a woman. And if you're going to lie to a woman, even on the phone, she can pick it up. If you're going to lie to a woman, lie on the phone because she can't see your face. That's the only chance you've got of getting past. But even then, it may not work. Sometimes that's why men break up by email. Or now they're breaking up by Twitter. You know that because women, you say, whatever you say, women can pick up the truth absolutely instantly. And so women are really, really sensitive to these things. Men are not. Men are very easily bamboozled. Women are brilliant at relationships, men are not. Women think about relationships all the time. Men very seldom think about them. And this is just simply the way the human brain is constructed. So the most common problems in relationships are, first of all, lack of commitment. And a lack of commitment means that you're going part of the way, as we said before, and you can always solve a lack of commitment problem by making a decision you're in 100%, 100%. My friend Charlie Jones says, as far as my wife concerns, divorce, never, 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 never. Murder perhaps, but not divorce. And the thing is, once you've made a decision to be in 100%, it liberates you. I was reading an article by a very intelligent woman who said she was single during her 20s and she finally got married. It was only after she got married that she realized how exhausting it is to be single, how totally preoccupying it is. Your whole life is consumed with being single when you're single. She said now that she's married, she's in her 30s, she's got 2 children. She said, it's quite amazing. It's almost like the first stage of a rocket just fell away. All those crazy days when you were single, when you get married and you're committed to a single person, your life becomes so much simpler. And then all your focus becomes on the future and your children and other things you can do. But when you're married, you're just totally involved in, or when you're single, you're totally involved in being single. Napoleon Hill once said that no man ever becomes successful until he's married to a good woman. And maybe today it's no woman ever becomes successful until she's married to a good man, because that frees them to focus on other things in life. They're not preoccupied with being single. Making a commitment is not tying yourself up. It actually liberates you. A total commitment frees you completely from all the confusion of being single. So number 2, a lack of commitment is often expressed in a trading relationship where you go halfway, I'll go halfway. And the key to resolving this is for each person to make 100% commitment to the relationship. The second problem is trying to change the other. What you seize is what you get. Remember Flip Wilson? What you seize is what you get. People don't change, and trying to change another person is a very subtle way. Lack of commitment, by the way, is a subtle way of saying that I'm really not convinced that you're the right person for me, which it means I'm really not convinced that you're good enough. And whenever a person is reminded or suggested that they're not good enough, their self-esteem goes down, they become insecure, they become frustrated. And it's the same thing here. Trying to change the other person is a way of saying that you're simply not satisfactory to me the way you are. So therefore, I want you to do more of this and less of that. I want you to straighten up and fly right. And it's amazing, people at weddings will talk to the bride, and the bride says, well, I'll knock the rough edges off him after we've been married for a while. Or I'll get him to stop doing that, or he'll start doing this. And so they go in with this whole idea. And they have this idea that you can change people. But here's an interesting model. I call it the iceberg model. And when you look at an iceberg, or you hear about an iceberg, especially in the North Atlantic, what you do is you find here's the iceberg, but only a small part of the iceberg's above the surface. They say 10%, sometimes it's only 5%, it's only a small amount. All the rest of the iceberg is down in the deep ocean currents, and all that iceberg is affected by the currents. The sailors used to be amazed when we'd be sailing with the wind north and they'd see an iceberg sailing south against the wind. And it was only later they realized that the deep currents were going south, and that what was going on in the surface was just a little bit of wind. Well, this is a human personality. This is the past of a person, and this is the present of the person. So when you try to change the person, what you're doing is you're working on the tip of the iceberg. But since you cannot change all that history, going back to early childhood, every year of that person's life, all those experiences, beliefs, convictions, fears, doubts, and so on, since you cannot change all that, it's very hard to change a person just by pushing on the top of the iceberg. If you cannot change all of that, you probably can't change the person at all. So what you do is you just accept the person completely for who they are, with no judgment and no questions. And if there's things that you would wish that person would do, you can always say, I would appreciate it if you would, pick up your socks or put your dishes in the sink or something like that. Men are real quick to respond, by the way. If you ask us to do something, we will. Why don't you take the trash out? Well, I didn't know you wanted the trash taken out. Well, the trash bag is sitting there in the living room. I put it in the living room between you and the television so you'd see it. I said, I thought you didn't have any other place to put it. Would you take it out? Of course. And they'll take it out. Would you do this? Of course. You ask a man to do anything, they'll do anything that you ask them to. But don't say, why don't you, think of it yourself? Are you kidding? They don't think about anything. So when you're direct with a man, when you want him to do something or not do something, he'll almost always do it immediately. But you have to ask him. Just the most powerful word in the human lexicon is the word ask. Ask for what you want, ask clearly, ask repeatedly if necessary, ask confidently, ask cheerfully, ask politely, ask warmly, but just ask. Men are real suckers for that. You ask us to do it, we'll do it. We'll take out the trash, we'll mow the lawn, we'll pick up the groceries, we'll pick up stuff on the way home. But don't expect us to think about it all by ourselves because we just can't do it. All right, so trying to change the other is a way of saying that you're not good enough the way you are, and therefore you need to be whipped into shape. And so sometimes we find if you just stop trying to change a person and just say, would you do this for me or do that for me, they'll change all by themselves. Sometimes people are proud of the person they become, and they'll become more adamant when you try to change them. They'll dig in, but they'll also be angry because what you're telling them is, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough for you. Somehow you're superior to me, that you feel that you can inflict what you think is good for me on me. I mean, it's not a good road to go down. Okay, number 3 is jealousy. Jealousy is called the green-eyed monster, and it comes from the feeling of low self-esteem. People who feel jealous feel I'm not good enough. They feel someone else could never really love me. I'm not good enough. And the way that you deal with jealousy, we say the natural human condition is that of feeling inferior. We, from infancy, have learned to compare ourselves with others. So we're always comparing ourselves with other people. And we're always feeling better or feeling worse. And so in many cases, because we were born as a child, here's what happened. According to the psychiatrist, when we're born as a child, we're really small, and our parents are really big and powerful, and they make all decisions, and they know all things. In fact, they have found that a child's attitude toward God is determined by the way their parents treat them. If their father is angry and demanding, then they think God is an angry and demanding and vengeful God. So if their father is warm and loving and supportive, they think that's the way God is. And they develop that feeling before they can even speak. That becomes their worldview of these powerful people. So there was a book written by a mother, a really nice book, it was called Life Among the Giants. And it was about little kids, and what do little kids see? And they look up and they see knees. And they look up and they see these giants, these huge people who tell them what to do and move them around and pick them up and put them in the car and take them out and lug them in the seat and change their diapers and put them to bed. And so a child grows up feeling very small. And these feelings of being small or inferior, being little, pervade throughout life. It's only when the child grows up and has enough emotional sustenance that they feel big and powerful. They feel empowered. But we have a natural tendency to feel little because that's how we were during our formative years. We felt real little. And whenever something happens, like the person that we're interested in seems to express an interest in someone else, we again feel little. We feel inferior. We feel that we're not good enough. Be very alert to this. But most jealousy comes from inside the person experiencing it, not from the external experience. One last point, it is never cute to make a person feel jealous. Sometimes they say, you should flirt with somebody else when you're with him or her, and it'll make them feel jealous and they'll realize how much they like you. It is never cute to make a person feel jealous because jealousy is extremely painful. Not only that, if a person has real problems with jealousy, it can make them really unhappy, right to the point of violence and mental illness and all kinds of things. So jealousy is something that's a real problem in relationships, and try to avoid it. To resolve this, work on your own self-concept by saying, I like myself or I love myself. People who have high self-esteem don't worry about jealousy. They don't worry about these things because they have such confidence in themselves that it doesn't affect them. The behaviors of other people don't affect them. They would prefer not, but they are not bothered by it. And the more you say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, the less you experience any negative emotion at all. The next is self-pity. Self-pity is a real killer in our society. Self-pity is rooted in low self-esteem. It's where people pity themselves and see themselves as victims, see themselves as hard done by. So the solution for self-pity is to get busy, is that those who have a worthwhile purpose in life do not experience self-pity. In fact, it's interesting, many of the people who are passionate about causes, about helping others, are actually trying to escape from their own feelings of low self-esteem and insignificance. They're trying to escape from the destructive criticism of their childhood, and they're dedicating their lives to helping other people. Because when you throw your whole heart into doing something for other people, you forget all about yourself. So there was a line from Arthur Tennyson when he talked about the death of his friend Arthur Hallam. It's a famous line in poetry. He said, "I must lose myself in action lest I wither in despair." And what he was saying is I have to just get so busy that I just don't despair of what has happened to me in my life. And many people who are passionate about helping others are actually trying to escape their own feelings of inferiority, unhappiness, destructive criticism by doing something that helps others and helping them get out of it.